Hey guys, so today's video, disclosure, Tad won't be in today's video. He's actually in his room with his nurse. But if you saw the last video, we went to Tad's cardiologist, and typically when we come back from anywhere, we're pretty good about spraying everything down. We normally change his clothes, give him a bath, try to wash off any germs to prevent bringing germs into the house, because no germs are safe for Tad, so we just have to be extra careful. And even more careful now that there's this virus out here, because Tad does have cardiac and lung disease. So those are the two things that are kind of like high risk for this virus. So, also disclosure, I'm not a medical professional. This is just things that I learned as a parent of a medical child, things that I do to help keep Tad safe. So if you have questions, anything, you should always go to your doctor. When we got back from the appointment, we everybody changed, took showers, cleaned off, and then I took everything out of Tad's diaper bag, which today's video is what's in Tad's diaper bag, but Tad's diaper bag is actually our emergency trach bag as well. So most parents have diapers, wipes, toys, change of clothes, some snacks in their diaper bag. We have all of the things that help keep Tad's airway stable, his trach. So Tad has a tracheostomy tube, which is you and I breathe out of our mouth and our nose. Tad breathes through a tube in his throat, is how he breathes. So that's his airway. So everything in his diaper bag is just things that we have to have on us at all times in case of emergency to help Tad. So I'll kind of show like a list here of everything that I carry in Tad's diaper bag. This list wasn't provided to us by anybody. This is just things that I learned that we need to have with us. I'll start off by saying this is kind of like a side note story time. So Tad came home from the hospital and he was 7 months old. When Tad came home, he was on a ventilator, which everyone's now kind of hearing about what ventilators are, but it's basically a machine that breathes for you, or it assists somebody while breathing. So if they're not able to inflate their lungs all the way, the ventilator helps with that. Tad was on a ventilator all the time. He was on continuous oxygen, so we also had him on a pulse ox, which is a pulse oximeter that monitors the oxygen in your blood. So he was always on one of those. And then we also have to carry around a suction machine to clear out his trach if need be, and his feed. So Tad has a G-tube. He doesn't feed by mouth, so we always used to carry around his feeding bag with his feeding pump and all the accessories. So back to story time. Tad was 7 months old when we first brought him home, so we brought him home one day during the week, and it was like 2 p.m. And then not even 24 hours later, the next morning at 8 a.m., we had to be at his pediatrician. So we hadn't even had Tad home for 24 hours. I knew how serious, his machines were on keeping him alive and well, but we hadn't had much of like a transition period to kind of help like us learn our new life. So we go to the pediatrician. At this time we still have home care, but it's a different nurse that's here right now than in the story. So we went to the pediatrician and Tad needed to be suctioned, so I went to get the suction machine out to suction him, and we realized that there was a piece missing in the suction that wasn't allowing it to create suction to suction Tad's trach. So I used this handy dandy little thing, and this story time is just kind of like, it's funny now, but at the time it was not really funny. And it just kind of like set the tone of like why all these things are so important to have with Tad at all times. Anybody who has a trach, really. So didn't have the suction machine, wasn't working. Tad started desatting. He really needed to be suctioned. So my mom instinct just kind of like kicked in, and I grabbed this out of her diaper bag. If you have somebody with a trach, you may know what this is, but if not, you probably don't know what this is. So this is called, a DOE trap. So it's this little canister, and it has these two little end pieces. One is like a suction tip. It's got like a little hole on the end, and then the other one is like a little piece that you actually breathe into. So it's almost like if you've ever siphoned gas, you like kind of the same mechanism. So I put this end in Tad and then breathed. So kind of a fun experience. That nurse that was there looked at me like I was crazy. I thought it was crazy at that time, but it was what I had to do for Tad. So luckily everything was fine. But when that happened, it just kind of like scared me. I knew how serious having everything is for Tad, but having that happen just kind of like really, it was a nice welcome home from Tad, and it also made me realize like we need to make sure that when we're out with him that we have everything we need. And luckily at that case it was something that I had an improvise for, but if it were to be a piece for the ventilator or for the oxygen, there wouldn't have been, you know what I mean, there's not much of like a substitute for those things. I made my list for everything. So I made a list of everything that needs to be in each bag that got checked before we left, and then I also made a list that went over all of the things that needed to be done before we left the house. So this just kind of made me feel like when we left the house, I was prepared. Even to this day, we've been home with Tad for, he's 2.5, and he's been home for 2 years almost, for over 2 years. And we get into the car, and I say to myself out loud, I always say, we have the diaper bag, we have suction, we've got Tad. Because those are the 3 things we bring now, but before it was like, we had that list and we checked everything off. So these are just the things I'm going to try to go from most important to least important. So most important is an Ambu bag, which you've probably seen these before. So it's basically like, this is attached to a mask in most cases, because most people breathe out of their mouth and their nose, and then you get breaths. So since Tad breathes out of his trach, this little piece right here connects straight to his trach, and then we would do breaths. And if we needed to give oxygen, this is the piece that oxygen gets attached to. This is our number one thing we always need to have with us. Because Tad doesn't breathe like normal, if we had to give him CPR, it's not like giving CPR like normal. Next thing is a trach. And I do say that an Ambu bag is more important than a trach, because if his trach were to come out and say it fell on the ground, we would, in worst case, just put that back in. So we need to have an Ambu bag, because like it's one thing to do mouth to mouth on a person, but like taking my mouth and putting it on his trach is just very unsterile. So that's why Ambu bag is number one. Then this is his trach. This is just a sterilized one. This is the size that he's in right now, and then you always have to have a size smaller. So current size trach and then a size smaller, because if his trach is out for, and it shouldn't be out for an extended amount of time, but there is a possibility for his stoma to close, so you have to have one smaller just in case. So these are the dealy traps. That's that weird little contraption. I always keep these in his diaper bag because, one, you don't know if something's going to happen to the suction machine, just like my funny story time, or in a case that the suction machine dies because it is battery operated, or in case, so like when we go for a walk, we bring this diaper bag with us. This diaper bag goes everywhere with us. If we're not within half a minute of getting this diaper bag, then it comes with us. So when we go on a walk around the neighborhood, even though we're only maybe 5-10 minutes away, we have to have this diaper bag, because if we need it now, not something like when we get home in a few minutes. So we don't bring the suction with us, so if worst case, we've done it before, we've used those dealy traps to suction him if he needs it, but he has a strong cough, so we can cough up secretions. Some of this may not make any sense, like if you don't know a trach, never had a trach, people, some of this may not make much sense. Hopefully it's somewhat making sense. These are suction catheters, so these hook up to the suction machine and do the same, thing as this, but with the machine. So instead of me breathing or like sucking in on that green piece, the suction machine creates a suction. Then along with having a spare trach, we always have to have things to do a trach change. So we have trach ties. I carry 2 just in case. This is kind of like the necklace that holds the trach in place. So there's 2 Velcro straps, and then there's one in the back, and that holds the trach in. So we always have these. These are fit for bigger kids, so we have to cut it with a pair of scissors, and then this is sterile lube to lubricate the trach before putting it in so that it doesn't irritate the stoma. I don't know if I said, but the stoma is the hole that the trach is in, if that's confusing. Then I carry tons of split gauze, because the split gauze is a little piece of gauze that sits between his skin and the trach, so that, again, there's no irritation. Lots of Q-tips, because Q-tips can be used for many things, and then also if his G-tube ever came out and the stoma started to close, you can use the end of a Q-tip as like an obturator-ish to help push the G-tube back in. Saline, just in case if we need to wipe around the stoma or such. So these are actually, there's 2 different kinds of suction catheters. So this is a suction catheter that's single use. You use it suction and then that gets thrown away. This one is, it's a closed circuit, so it's basically like you're able to use it multiple times. We prefer this one over the single use one. It's all about preference, or what your insurance will cover. Then the last thing on the trach is HMEs. So our mouth and our nose acts as like a humidifier for our lungs, so that our lungs don't dry out. But because Tad doesn't breathe out of his mouth and his nose, these they're like little barrels. They sit onto his trach and they help humidify to make sure that his lungs don't dry up. If you've ever seen our Instagram stories, Tad refuses to wear them, but we still carry them. Also, if we're in like public places, I do always try to put an HME on because it is somewhat of a barrier for germs going straight into his lungs, because the trach is just a direct access to your lungs. Then that's everything trach-wise. This is a neo-sucker, just in case if we need to suction his mouth. Some people use this also to suction the trach. Then this little handy dandy box here is filled with everything we need to change his G-tube if need be. Basically, it's similar things to the trach. It's a little button that goes directly into his stomach. It feeds him, we use the mini one button, and then it's got an obturator, sterile lube, and a syringe to fill it up, and alcohol pad to like wipe off to make a sterile-ish field. Sanitizer, because we use tons and tons of sanitizer, not because there's virus, but because of Tad's life. And then obviously I have like diapers and wipes. Don't really feel the need to describe those two. I'm sure you know what those things are. We don't really bring Tad's feeding pump with us anymore because now he can tolerate syringe feeds. So we'll just drop his food into this and then push it into his syringe or into his G-tube. And actually, now that I'm saying it, I need to get a G-tube extension. Then this is kind of like my emergency kit and Tad's. So it has kind bars, just like little granola bars in case I get hungry. It also has an outfit for in case Tad decides to do something to his outfit. And then this little white box is like a first aid kit with like band-aids and such like that. This is kind of Tad's little emergency kit. It just has like little things to help keep him occupied because he's a toddler. Okay, so this little handy dandy binder is probably up at the top of the list. We can make do without it. I do, for the most part, remember a lot of Tad's meds and such. But this binder, so his hospital gave us this to start off with when we first brought Tad home because we had a lot of things to keep track of, and I've just kind of continued it. So I have everything from his meds, like the dosage and the amount that he gets. I also have like a schedule for him because Tad's gotten admitted so many times. I kind of know the questions that they're going to ask. This doesn't have any personal information, so this is just like Tad's schedule. So I listed all his meds, I listed all his feeds, and this is like when we changed the last like trach, G-tube, whatever. It's actually out of date right now, but I carry this because obviously if Tad's getting admitted to the hospital, he's not in the greatest shape. So while I'm trying to play my mom role and be there for Tad, I can just give the nurses this piece of paper rather than having them ask all the questions and me trying to play my nurse role and getting my words jumbled or giving them the wrong information or such. So we make that list. It's always in his diaper bag. I try to keep it kind of updated. That's why it's handwritten, because I have had to update it so many times. It would be a pain in the butt to type it up. But and then I also keep things like any referrals or if we have any medication lists in here. I also do keep the last of the discharge paperwork because that always has up-to-date meds and such. And it'll also have like height and weight, so I keep referrals in here, I said. I also have like this whole little thing that has a bunch of different business cards, so I have all the numbers of all of his doctors. I keep all of his immunizations in here. Our current thing right now is like his hearing, because we're in the process before all this virus of getting like hearing aids and stuff like that. So I have all of his hearing tests in here. I have his, he's also new to getting like physical therapy and such, so I have those documents in here. Then I also have like, he had a recent MRI, things like that, like things that I might need. So when I go to the doctor, sometimes there's just information that they need, and sometimes it'll just be faster if I can just say, oh, here's a piece of paper and give it to them, rather than going through, like if you were to see Tad's chart online, it is probably very extensive. So makes my life easier, sometimes it makes the doctor's life a little bit easier. So I do highly recommend, if you have a medical baby, to get a binder and I have it all labeled, like different little tabs, label it and keep it in the diaper bag for things like that. And I think that's about it. So now I'm gonna put everything back in. Alright, so that's everything in Tad's diaper bag. Hope you enjoyed. Hopefully it wasn't too overwhelming. It was definitely overwhelming for me when we first brought Tad home, but after a few lists that were made and finding a routine and kind of having homes for everything, it's made things a lot easier. So if you do have a baby with a trach, hopefully you found a little bit of information about this, and if you don't, then maybe you found it interesting. But I hope you enjoyed, and sorry Tad wasn't in this video, he'll be in the next one.